The red and blue lights danced across my driveway, flickering through the night as two squad cars rolled to a stop in front of my home. From the living room window, I saw my 16-year-old daughter, Emily, frozen on the porch, her overnight bag still clutched in trembling hands. Two officers were approaching her cautiously, their palms hovering over their duty belts. And there, standing at the edge of my property with her arms crossed, and that infuriatingly smug grin, was Patricia Hawthorne, the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Ridge Estates. What Patricia didn't know was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her nosy, power-drunk life. Let me back up a bit. My name is David Garrison, and I've served as a circuit court judge here in Jefferson County for the past 12 years. After my divorce 3 years ago, my daughter Emily began splitting her time between my house in Maple Ridge and her mother's place across town. It was a smooth arrangement, at least for everyone except Patricia Hawthorne, our ever-watchful HOA president, who seemed to treat every guest like an invader trespassing on sacred land. Patricia had ruled over Maple Ridge for 5 years, turning what should have been a simple homeowners association into her personal dictatorship. She memorized every bylaw, enforced every rule with a fanatic's zeal, and took visible joy in catching residents in even the smallest violations. Trash cans visible after 6 p.m. That's a $50 fine. Grass half an inch too tall. Another citation. She once fined a neighbor $200 for leaving Christmas lights up until January 3rd. But her favorite obsession was policing who came and went from the neighborhood. Patricia fancied herself a suburban security guard, lurking by the gates, questioning delivery drivers, tailing unfamiliar cars, even snapping photos like some low-budget detective. Most of us ignored her antics, figuring it wasn't worth the energy to confront her. That changed the day she set her sights on my daughter. Emily had just arrived for her weekend visit. Her mom dropped her off at the gate like usual, and she walked the short 2 blocks to my house, a routine she'd done dozens of times. I was in my home office reviewing Monday's case files when I heard something unusual outside. At first, I thought it was kids playing until I caught the sharp crackle of police radios. I rushed to the front door. There stood Emily, surrounded by 2 officers, tears streaking down her cheeks as she tried to explain that she lived here, that I was her father. But Patricia wouldn't let her speak. Her shrill, self-righteous voice cut through the air like nails on a chalkboard. I saw her sneaking around the back of the house, Patricia said, waving her hands dramatically. She was clearly casing the place. I've never seen her before, and I know everyone in this community. She's obviously some troubled teen looking to break in while the owners are gone. The officers exchanged glances, skeptical but cautious. The taller one, a calm woman named Officer Chun, tried to de-escalate. "Ma'am," she said gently. "She says she lives here. She even has a key," Patricia scoffed. "Of course she has a key. She probably stole it or had one made. I've seen this on the news. These kids case neighborhoods wait for the right moment and strike. I'm telling you, I prevented a burglary. You should be thanking me." That's when I stepped outside. "Is there a problem here, officers?" I asked. Patricia's face lit up like she'd been waiting for an audience. "Oh, Judge Garrison, thank goodness you're home. I just caught this girl trying to break into your house. Don't worry, I called 911 right away." I walked down the porch steps slowly, pulling my wallet from my pocket. "That won't be necessary, officers," I said, handing them my ID. "This is my daughter Emily. She's here for her visitation weekend." Officer Chin took my license and judicial ID, and I could see her demeanor shift immediately. Her partner, a younger officer named Mitchell, stepped back slightly in recognition. They both knew me. I'd presided over more than a few of their department's cases. "Judge Garrison," Chin said formally, "our apologies for the confusion. We received a report of a possible break-in." And just like that, Patricia's confidence started to crack. "Wait, what? No, that can't be right," she sputtered. "I've never seen this girl before. She can't possibly be Miss Hawthorne," I interrupted, my voice carrying the same weight it does in my courtroom. "This is my daughter, Emily. She's been visiting me every other weekend for 3 years. If you've never noticed, that says more about your attention span than her right to be here." Patricia's face went red. Well, how was I supposed to know? She was acting suspiciously walking around the back of the house. "The back?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You mean the path from the street to the front door?" "The one she uses because the side gate is locked." Emily finally managed to speak, though her voice still trembled. I tried to tell her, "Dad, I said I was your daughter," but she just yelled at me to get off the property. And then she called the cops. Officer Mitchell was already jotting in his notepad. "Miss Hawthorne," he asked, "did this young lady identify herself to you before you called 911? Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Well, she might have said something," she stammered. But I didn't believe her. Anyone could claim to be someone's daughter. I was just being cautious. You can't be too careful these days. Officer Chin's voice was calm, but firm. "Actually, Miss Hawthorne, you can be too careful. Filing a false police report is a crime. You called 911 to report a burglary in progress," I said, my voice calm but cutting, "when what you actually saw was a teenager entering her father's home. With permission." "It wasn't false," Patricia protested, though her tone had lost its earlier bravado. "I genuinely believed." "You genuinely believed," I interrupted sharply, "that harassment could be mistaken for civic duty. Tell me, Miss Hawthorne, how many other residents' children have you called the police on? How many innocent visitors have you terrorized with your little vigilante routine?" The officers exchanged uneasy glances. It was clear this wasn't their first encounter with Patricia's self-appointed crusades. Officer Mitchell flipped through his notepad. "Actually, Judge Garrison," he said carefully, "we've responded to several calls from Miss Hawthorne over the past year. Most turned out to be false alarms." Patricia's face twitched. "I'm just trying to keep this neighborhood safe," she insisted, but her voice faltered, her arms dropping limply to her sides. "No," I corrected. "You're trying to control this neighborhood. There's a difference. And today, you crossed a line. You didn't just harass a visitor, you traumatized a minor." "My minor?" My daughter, Officer Chun, stepped forward, her tone now firm and professional. "Miss Hawthorne, I'm issuing a formal warning for misuse of emergency services. This incident will be documented. If there's a pattern of false reports, you could face criminal charges." Patricia's complexion went from red to pale. "You can't do that. I'm the HOA president. I have a responsibility." "Your responsibility," I interrupted, my voice cold and measured, "is to manage the common areas and enforce actual HOA bylaws. Nowhere in those bylaws does it grant you the authority to play police officer, and I should know. I reviewed them thoroughly before buying this house." I turned to the officers. "Gentlemen, I'll be filing formal complaints, not just with your department, but with the HOA board. This behavior needs to be addressed officially." "That's your right, Your Honor," Officer Chin replied, nodding respectfully. Then she turned to Patricia. "Ma'am, I suggest you educate yourself on what constitutes an actual emergency. Wasting police resources is a serious offense." As the officers returned to their patrol cars, Patricia stood frozen in the glow of their tail lights. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered during the scene, and though they began to disperse, I caught more than a few satisfied smirks and approving nods. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd had enough of Patricia's tyranny. "This isn't over." Patricia finally managed to sputter. "I'll be addressing this at the next board meeting. Your daughter may be allowed to visit, but there are procedures, guest registrations, proper notifications." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "let's discuss it right now. I believe I have board member Jennifer Rodriguez on speed dial. She's an attorney, you know. I'm sure she'd love to hear how the HOA president called the cops on a resident's child." Patricia's eyes went wide as I scrolled through my contacts. "That's not necessary," she stammered. "We can handle this internally." "Oh, I think it's very necessary," I replied, finding Jennifer's number. "You see, Miss Hawthorne, you've been operating under the illusion that your title gives you unlimited authority. But every system, even a homeowners association, has checks and balances." The next few weeks were interesting. True to my word, I filed formal complaints with both the police department and the HOA board. Word spread through Maple Ridge like wildfire. Patricia Hawthorne, the almighty HOA president, had called the cops on Judge Garrison's daughter, the same woman who had spent years flaunting her influence had just alienated one of the most respected legal figures in the county. 2 weeks later, the board called an emergency meeting. The community clubhouse was packed. Every seat was filled, residents lining the walls, murmuring in anticipation. One by one, they stood to speak, and it became painfully clear Patricia's reign of fear had been long overdue for an end. Mr. Patterson, an elderly widower, spoke first. He'd been fined because his grandson's bike sat in his driveway for 10 minutes. Then came the Sharps, who shared how Patricia called the police on their family reunion, claiming it was an unauthorized event. Even quiet, Mrs. Foster stood up, her hands trembling as she recounted being harassed over the color of her flower bed. Patricia sat at the board table, shrinking further with every testimony. Her once commanding posture had crumbled into something small, fragile, even. When the time came for the vote of no confidence, the result was unanimous. Not one person raised a hand in her defense. Even her former allies on the board couldn't justify her actions anymore. But the fallout didn't end there. After reviewing her history of false reports, the county prosecutor's office decided to press charges misuse of emergency services. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who couldn't stop calling the police was now being summoned by them. The morning of her arraignment, I saw her in the courthouse hallway. She looked like a shell of the woman she once was, her hair unkempt, her confident smile gone. Her attorney, a nervous young man who clearly regretted taking the case, was speaking in hushed tones. 50 hours of community service, I overheard him saying, and a $5,000 fine. You'll also be barred from holding any HOA leadership position for 5 years. Patricia's face crumpled. $5,000. 5 years in exile from her self-made kingdom. Our eyes met for a brief moment as I passed. I could have said something sharp, something satisfying, but I didn't need to. The law had already done what it was designed to do. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply arrives quietly, decisively. That morning, Patricia Hawthorne pleaded no contest. Her voice was barely above a whisper as she accepted the sentence. When the judge read her punishment aloud, community service, the fine, and the leadership ban, her shoulders sank. $5,000. 5 years of silence. And for the first time in a very long while, Maple Ridge Estates finally felt peaceful again.